Hey everybody, it's Jared Akers here from How to Be Happy, Happiness for the Practical Mind at jaredakers.com. I was working on a post today titled, well, the concept and topic is around how to be happy alone. And I was thinking back, over my life, and the majority of my life, I lived, I was alone, but I would have considered myself happy. There was actually two, I don't know, I guess iterations or different periods in my life where I experienced this aloneness and happiness at the same time, and because a lot of people ask me, well, can you be happy and be alone, or be happy and be single, or whatever, and I was thinking back, for the majority of my life, yeah, I was happy, but I still a lot of times felt alone, like even in a room full of people, because I wasn't really sure with who I was, and who my authentic self was, and I was still looking for all those external things to make me happy, validation through relationships, job, careers, or professions and stuff like that, mostly materialistic and monetary things. So even though I would consider myself happy at that period of time, I avoided real intimacy with others because I wasn't quite sure who I was and what I needed to be happy. And anytime a relationship would get pretty deep, was usually about the time that I would bail. And I actually had a psychiatrist tell me one time that I suffered from confrontation avoidance. So, if I got uncomfortable, then that's usually about the time I left, because I really wasn't sure how to express myself, or I wasn't emotionally connected. So even though there's a period of time, like I said, where I was alone and considered myself happy for many years, I wasn't really developing that deep intimacy with myself and others. And so in perspective now, that happiness that I had then was not even comparable to the happiness that I have now. And and there was even a period of time when I was alone, and I even became quite an introvert. And even though I would be alone most of the time, I was still consumed with learning and reading. That's when I got into computers and all that kind of stuff. But I really didn't spend time just being, just being with me, and because it wasn't that comfortable, so I had to have my mind always constantly trying to learn about something. And and then I reached a bottom emotionally, physically, and spiritually around 2006. I was 35. This was in March of 2006, and I was 35, and so I realized that there had to be a better way to live. And even up to that point in my life, even though I'd consider myself happy for the most part, at least that's what I showed on the outside, and I was just kind of acting as if most of the time, and I certainly seemed to be as happy or more happy than a lot of people around me. At least was my perception. But inside, I still had this kind of this feeling that something was missing, that there was a hole there, that I wasn't quite sure what I needed to fill it. So I tried filling it with a lot of stuff. But so when I got to that point where I was ready, just to kind of desperate enough to try anything, I just surrendered to the fact that maybe I didn't know how to be happy, and so I kind of did some self-discovery and personal development, and developed a spiritual sense of being, and all those kinds of things, and really dug deep into myself. And I saw a lot of help, books, therapists, 12-step programs, counselors, clergy, mentors, life coaches, you name it. If I thought there was something that I could learn, then I certainly looked into it. So, and I learned a lot from a lot of those different things. So, and then, as I discovered who I was, and really became connected, emotionally connected to myself, and had some self-respect, and it was like, before that point, it was like there was two versions of me walking through the world: what I felt on the inside, and who I really thought I was, and what I was portraying on the outside. But then after I went through this process, I really kind of came together as one, and I felt like, what I'm showing to the world is who I am truly on the inside, my authentic self. And consequently, as a result of that, I didn't need all these external validations anymore to make me happy or make me feel valued or worth something. So as a result, in my relationships and the way I view the world, it was more from a point of, since I don't need anything from anyone or anything per se to make me happy, it's more about what can I bring to the world, and what do I have to offer, and so that exudes outwards, that positive and optimistic outlook and all that energy. And so I attract very positive, outgoing, and happy people in my life. And that's when, after that period of time, was about a year that I was going through this real, digging deep into myself, that I met my wife, and was very honest and open about who I was, and with myself, and with people in my life for the first time. And the relationships that I've cultivated since that period of time has brought me the most soul-feeling happiness that I've ever experienced. And looking back now in retrospect and perspective, the happiness that I had before alone was not even comparable, but I didn't have anything to compare it to at the time. So, can you be happy alone? I certainly think that you can, yes. And like even now, I'm happy alone. I can sit in a room and meditate and just be with myself and my thoughts and just be, know that who I am is enough and that I have everything I need to be happy. And so I can still be alone and be happy. But when I, get into relationship with other people and be open to that, it makes it so much better, and it's such an amazing way to live and a lot more authentic happiness, that's long lasting, that inner peace and serenity. And I also was made me think about the movie Into the Wild. It's a book and a movie, Into the Wild. If you've not seen it, I was looking at or watching the last scene in the movie, and it's always been, I don't know, it touched me in a way that was hard to watch, and it brings up something inside me that's a real deep fear, I think, of a lot of people, and that's, being alone and dying alone. And in that last scene, Christopher is writing in his journal, and basically, if you're not familiar with the story, the guy, he's really, he's very smart, and he develops this sense of, morality, but he goes out across the country and just, he ends up dumping his car and giving away all his money and just hitchhikes and makes a lot of really amazing relationships, but he avoids intimacy. And in the end, he finally settles on his dream is to go into the Alaskan wilderness and live off the land. And, and he does that for a while, I think about 16 weeks, but he ends up eating something, a berry or something like that that's moldy or poisonous, but it ends up incapacitating him, and he ends up starving to death and dying alone in the wilderness. And in the last the last scene, he's writing in his journal, and he says something to the effect, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but I believe it's, happiness is only real when shared. And so that perspective, that's very deep, and the scene is just agonizing. It's hard for me to watch, but, he's kind of flashing over his life and his parents and his family and all the people that he's met, and how happy he was at those point in times, but he was always trying to get to this point where he thought that's where he wanted to be, and then the realization that the happiness that you have in the relationships with other people is really what matters, and unless you're sharing it with someone, is it really real? And so anyway, that's something to think about. And so anyway, yeah, you can be happy alone, and I certainly think that's true, but there's two types of aloneness. I can still be alone today with myself and be happy and be in a quiet room alone, and and it's an amazing journey to be, or amazing feeling to be at peace with yourself, and you can certainly be happy alone, by yourself without any relationships, but from my experience, the perspective and the level of happiness, it's different. I'm still happy, but the difference is not even comparable. So anyway, thanks for stopping by. How to be happy, happiness for the practical mind at jaredakers.com. And if you haven't checked out the site recently, please do, because me and my wife actually started a podcast, the How to Be Happy podcast with Jared and Emily Akers, where we talk about life, love, relationships, respect for yourself and your partners in life. And so anyway, I encourage you to check that out at jaredakers.com, and be honest, be loved, and be happy.